I still can't get out of my head that I'm not good enough. I know back when I was younger and I was at school, they called me Barbie, but not in a positive way. It was about calling me a bimbo.
Other people's words can only hurt you to the degree that you already believe them. They said something, but what had actually awoken in you was this idea that you thought there was something wrong with you or that you were less than. That's what actually hurt you, is your own view of yourself, not what somebody said.
Getting older, all of that kind of stuff, it's now the work to go, okay, who am I without the external validation or the appearance? Because that's going to change.
The attempt to try and stay young is one of the most rapid ways to age. The resistance to aging is what creates the dis-ease in the system, which will mean that your physiology ages more rapidly.
What's the meaning of life, Peter?
The meaning of life, I feel, is
Feeling confident in your skin is so much more than what you see in the mirror.
And how can you feel good? Well, that starts from within.
Welcome to the In Your Skin podcast. I'm Christy.
And I'm Anna. Join us each week as we sit down with world-leading experts and thought leaders to delve into the latest insights, groundbreaking research, and cutting-edge advancements in wellness, longevity, and beauty.
Thanks so much, Peter, for joining us today. We are so looking forward to this chat. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, followed your work. Actually, my stepdad, he's a big fan too, so he's going to be listening to this one.
all right.
But we're going to be talking about a lot of great stuff today, especially around your work when it comes to helping people free their mind, have freedom in their life. And I mean, Anna's got some amazing questions. She wanted to kick off today because she was so excited to chat to you.
Okay, good.
So I'm going to start off, but I actually asked my husband, like, what would you ask? And the first thing that he said was, what do you think the meaning of life is? And I thought it was a really big question. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a really interesting one. So what's the meaning of life, Peter?
That's an easy one. But I love that these men are chipping in because typically, my audience skews a little bit more feminine. No knock on the men, but I feel that's a reflection of the fact that you ladies are way more intuitive and typically more intelligent. But I'm glad that you're surrounded by stepdads and husbands who obviously, give a crap. But to answer your husband's question, that to me, not to be flippant, but, the meaning of life, I feel is relatively simple. And again, it might seem like a dismissive response, but the meaning of life is whatever you make it mean, right? So everyone's going to have their own story, their own set of beliefs or dogmas that they've subscribed to. I think what's behind your husband's question is more what I feel is the purpose of life, right? So, and I really do want people to understand the meaning of life truly is based on the perspective that we have as conditioned human beings. Everyone lives in their own world, right? There's one planet, but there's 8 billion worlds because everybody's got their own particular unique perspective. So that human is going to attribute meaning based on their conditioning. So that's the meaning. But to me, the purpose of life is a little bit more interesting, which is, without sounding too esoteric out of the gates, for me, the purpose of life is to liberate the souls that we are. So we incarnated, we've become bamboozled and misidentified with the physical meat suit of being human and the brain. And we think this is who we are. And I'm Peter, you're Anna, you're Christy. And, that's so seductive. And that to me is the ultimate form of addiction. So the real purpose of being human is to liberate the true essence of who we are, which is these timeless, boundless, limitless souls. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, is probably more the answer your husband was looking for.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
And his next question is, how the fuck do you do that?
Exactly. So how do you do that?
Yeah. You have to be in my mastermind. You have to work with there's many means by which people have these enlightening experiences of, becoming untangled from the constraints of their subconscious. But that is what I do in my 3-month mastermind program. That's what I do when I work with clients, is help them to recognize these constraints and limitations and fears that we all arrive with. It's part of the factory default settings of what it is to be human. And the opportunity is to break free from that. That's the real game.
Some people feel that you have to experience, and I'm moving on now, but some people feel that you have to experience pain before you can experience pleasure, or you need the negative before you can have the positive. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if it's, the choice of words, like you have to, like it sort of creates this mandatory experience. I think it's not so much have to, I think it's unavoidable because we live in a dualistic paradigm, meaning up, down, good, bad, right, wrong, pain, joy, like it's all there, right? So in this dualistic dimension, it's not that you have to have one, it's just that they're both an inextricable part of what it is to be human. So you're going to experience them just by virtue of being here.
And what do you think?
Right.
I mean, you talked about before helping people break free from some of these limitations and their subconscious beliefs and things like that. Can you explain a little bit more about that for someone who is listening and is like, what is the subconscious? And how do I uncover what these beliefs are?
Yeah, great question. So to me, subconscious, meaning below sub, some people call it unconscious. But for me, subconscious is really the narratives and the deep linguistics of our identity that got formed during our childhood, and everyone's going to have it, right? So the feeling of, for example, not being enough or somehow being less than a more successful, smarter sibling, or perhaps being in a family where you weren't given a lot of affection and then maybe coming up with the idea that you're not loved, or maybe living in an environment that was a bit mercurial because, God forbid, mum or dad got in fights, or dad had a few too many cocktails and would raise his voice. And for a kid, that's scary. So they felt they were not safe. So to me, that's what I'm revealing. And my sort of download in this lifetime was to recognize these 10 primal prisons that everybody has in their subconscious. And it typically in language shows up as I'm not something, right? So I'm not enough. I'm not loved. I'm not safe. I'm not worthy. Things that people can relate to. But most people aren't walking around like that. They're talking about, I struggle with anxiety, or I'm scared of public speaking, or I can't find a good relationship, right? These are the human conscious conversations, but they're being, for me, the genesis of them is these subconscious patterns. So for example, if somebody thinks that they're not enough, which everyone can relate to, then they might be exhausted because in the adult professional world, they're trying to prove themselves in the workplace, or they're trying to finally get the approval from a father who was always hard on them, right? So that's how it manifests, but really it's being driven from a deeper misidentification, this fundamental lie that we all have that somehow we're not enough or we're not something. So that's the subconscious. It's like, you're in a building now, wherever that is, wherever your studio is, and that building, however big, if it's a small, cute house or a big apartment or whatever it is, was only built because of the foundations upon which it was created and constructed, right? We understand that. So likewise, our identity and our persona is built on a foundation of our subconscious beliefs. So that's the way I delineate it. And it's not easy to necessarily, certainly by yourself, to access them. It takes a lot of discernment and usually being in the presence of someone who really knows how to listen, because most even friends or therapists care and they want to listen and say, no, you're not a loser, you're amazing, but instead of going, well, why do you think you're a loser? Where did that start? And let's really unpack it to see if it's actually a truth. Because underneath it all, the subconscious linguistics that we're bound by, they're not truths, but they're very convincing. And obviously, the older we get, the longer we have them and the more evidence we attract to prove it. Like I was just this morning working with a woman who's 48, and she grew up in England in a very well-to-do family where kids were told to behave a certain way, which is the norm. But in this case, she was, really disciplined, not in a way that was abusive, but, you don't do this and don't do that and sit up straight and all the things kids hear. Then went to boarding school where it was reinforced. And here she is, a 48-year-old woman, having had 2 divorces and still frustrated because she's done all this work as to why she doesn't really create the things she wants to create, or why am I not pursuing the dreams of writing? And it's because I helped her see that she had learned, the prison she was in is that it's not safe for her to be her. She's not free to be herself, which you can start to see, right? She's not walking around going, I'm not free to be me, but that's the world she was stuck in. So it manifests in a way, and what I guess my gift or skill is to be able to reverse engineer what people are dealing with to help them highlight what is the subconscious lie that is sustaining that. And then when we relieve that, that's freedom. So
and how
pretty simple, really.
Yeah, it sounds very simple, but as you were talking, I was like, this is me to a T. Like my story is I'm someone like probably many people, I don't have the confidence in myself. I do these things and then all of a sudden I've done them. I did a law degree. I went into a show where I thought I wouldn't get past day one and I did extremely well. And I'm doing all these things. However, I still can't get out of my head that I'm not good enough, because the next thing that I do, I go into it thinking the same thing. And this has been my whole life. And maybe you can help me unpack this a little bit, my little therapy session. But I know back when I was younger and I was at school, they called me Barbie, but not in a positive way. It was about calling me a bimbo, an airhead. So I always had to prove to everybody that I was more than just my hair color. So I went out and I did all these things. And like I said, I did law. I did all these different things that really put me out of my comfort zone. Even though I was so scared to do it, I would tell people, don't worry, I'm going to fail. I'm going to come back. It's fine, but I'm going to do it. And again, I do okay at it, or I do well at it. But my mindset hasn't changed, and I'm almost 40, and I'm just like, why can't I get rid of this when I kind of know where I feel like I know where it stemmed from. But everything I go into, even creating this podcast, I was saying to Chrissy, I was like, no one's going to want to listen to us. Like, why start this? And it's like everything I do. And I'm kind of sick of it. I'm over it. I'm over feeling like that. Like you say, and I want to be free. But how, like people that are listening, what are some tools that they can use if they are feeling like this that are quite simple? It's probably better to come to you and experience the whole experience.
I was like, do Peter's masterclass.
I've got to do your masterclass. But people that are listening, what can they do right now if they feel like they're stuck and they want to get out?
Okay, so first of all, I have nothing but compassion. The little girl in you that's still, if you look at like being called Barbie and you understand that it was more derogatory, right? Like, okay, I'm sure you're both, as you are now, pretty girls as well as pretty women, but that can be an onus, like that can be a disadvantage for a lot of women, right? Because there's an expectation that comes with that. So to answer your question, people can find me on Instagram. They can, even if you don't want to do my 3.5 month mastermind, which is the most powerful offering I have. I mean, I'm sharing the keys to the kingdom of what it is to be human, and I'm coaching people. So you vicariously get, the world of freedom through other people, because everyone can relate. But I do want to address what you just shared, because in your language, I listen very, acutely, and you said that your language was, if you go back and listen to the podcast, you said that you have to prove that you're more than your hair color, right? So at that moment, that little girl, going back to, okay, you're almost 40, but that little girl who was like 8 to 12 to 15 or whatever, is young, impressionable. What we want to be able to identify with compassion is that hurt. You were made fun of, right? It's basically bullying, verbal abuse, which everyone goes through. So we don't want to sort of dismiss it, because to you, it was impactful. So then what you've learned as a compensation, which makes sense, is, as you said, I have to prove that I'm more than my hair color, right? So that little girl, unbeknownst to you, then went about a mission of self-preservation because she was hurt. So to you, it occurs as though I'm somehow less than because I'm this dumb blonde or whatever, because they called you Barbie. But to me, what it actually points to is that your soul chose to incarnate in this lifetime to have the experience of some feeling of inadequacy, because you're here to remind yourself that that's not true. So you curated things like that in school. These girls or whoever were mean. It hurt. And then typically with any trauma, we learn to cope. We develop a strategy. So you created this adaptation, which makes sense, which is, okay, that hurt. So I'm never going to feel like I'm less than because of what people think of me. What you don't realize is that moment where those girls are saying, hey, Barbie, even if it happened over a course of time, but let's just say in the moment it's, 30 seconds, they're just saying something. But for you, it created a lifetime of an identity that you're still trying to disprove. Right, those girls, like right now, they're arguing with their husband. They're going through divorce. They're trying to start a business. They're filing for bank. Like, who knows what the fuck they're doing, right?
Yeah, they probably don't remember that they even said that to me as well.
Probably couldn't even, absolutely. And they probably, even if they're listening because they now admire you, they're like, oh my God, I was one of them. I feel terrible, But the point is, it's got nothing to do with what they said. Because again, I write in quotes and I say other people's words can only hurt you to the degree that you already believe them. So, meaning they said something, but what it actually awoken in you was this idea that you thought there was something wrong with you or that you were less than. And then that's what actually hurt you, is your own view of yourself, not what somebody said. Mm-hmm. But as humans, we don't have the discernment. As children, we definitely don't have the ability to separate those, right? So the good news is that you're having this conversation. Hopefully you can get off it and realize, oh, I made that shit up. They just said something. but it's really Anna's view of herself that you're fighting, not what other people think of you. And when you see that, it's kind of comical. You're like, oh my gosh, nobody's actually criticizing me. And even if they are criticizing you, they're just saying something. But I'm really holding myself to a low standard that then I am trying to compensate for. But if you see the futility of that, you're saying you're somehow not enough or less than. And then you, thinking you're less than, are trying to overcome it.
Yeah.
Like it's impossible. And that's why you're exhausted. It's stupid.
It is exhausting.
But that's human. And so we have compassion and we can laugh about it. So yeah, so you can stop doing that because I get the trauma is a strong word, but for a kid, it's traumatic. You know, when you're made fun of, it hurts. And when we get hurt, we try to do something to avoid the pain. We're humans, we avoid pain and we try to seek pleasure. So it made sense that you became this all-star, somebody who's trying to, basically work too hard, become a perfectionist, and is all a adaptation to a hurt that only you can sustain. Once you see that and go, oh, wait, is it really true that because of what some girls said that I'm somehow less than? No, they said something, blah, blah, blah. It awoke in me a story of inadequacy that you came here to transcend. That's the answer your questions, your husband's question of the purpose of life is to break free. Break free of what? The story that you came here to transcend. And then you can see, oh, is it true? Like, is it really true, Anna, that you're not enough? Like, it's an absolute truth.
Yeah, it's not, obviously.
It's not. That's how you feel.
It's not.
Right? It's
exactly.
not. So then in the absence of that, if you couldn't look through the lens of you're not enough, if you had no relationship to it, how would you feel? What would become available to you?
To be honest, I don't know because I have lived with it my whole life. So I actually don't know who I would be.
That's a really beautiful answer. And that's really astute of you because honestly, in my mastermind, when I do this and I take people through this process, somewhat rapidly with you, but I tell people I'm introducing you to a world that you're not familiar with because they don't know how to act, not trying to be enough, not trying to be loved, not trying to be safe. Like that's all they've known. So you have to use your imagination a bit. Just play with me. What do you think might become available if you didn't have to constantly compensate for thinking you're not enough? How might you feel?
I know I'd feel more confident in everything that I do. And I don't think things would hold me back as much as, and I'd probably flourish more than I am now. So I definitely think it's a world I want to be in. That's for sure.
Well, that's why my company's called 2.0 World. It's a different world. I'm not improving the one that doesn't currently work. You need only look at the news or social media to see the insanity that's going on out there. But yeah, this world that you just dipped your toe in is the world that I speak to and invite people to come and join, which is based in freedom, love, and possibility.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You're welcome.
It's so powerful.
Did you see something in that, Christy?
Oh my God. I'm like,
She's now free.
I'm now free. I mean, I think
that's the beauty of it though, because we can all relate, right? And obviously you girls are friends and you've known each other and you know each other's stories better than I do. But you can see, so at one level, like having these fears and these constraints and these beliefs of inadequacy does quote unquote motivate us, like the guy who becomes uber successful as a compensation for thinking he was a weak little kid and bullied at school. He might accomplish a lot, but he's also going to have a heart attack and probably 3 marriages, right? Like, because there's no real authenticity. He's not fully available because he's too busy trying to overcome his own feelings of inadequacy. But once you get out of that game, boy, that's freedom. That's why it's my main product,
But how do you get out of it? So you're just now talking for me a bit about like imposter syndrome, which again, I feel like that is me to a T. And I always feel like everything that I do, I shouldn't be there. Like, why me? How do you get out of that? Because I know a lot of people would also be feeling that when it comes to something like imposter syndrome.
For sure. So again, it's not you. So when you say that's me to a T, the way that you're voicing that is
10 minutes ago.
There you go. Look at that. Exactly. She's a quick study, this one. So really, we want to understand the behaviors. It's a pattern. It's not you is what I tell people. So it's a pattern that's appropriate for the way that you've been conditioned based on what you went through as a kid. That's it. So imposter syndrome is a survival strategy, but it's also an experience. So you're putting yourself in positions as a compensation. So for you thinking that, okay, I have to prove that I'm more than my hair color was the compensation that little girl made for feeling less than because she was made fun of. We can understand that. But now you're in a vicious cycle where you're only trying to overcome your own view of yourself, which is actually impossible, which is why it's exhausting. The imposter syndrome is part of the experience that is a byproduct of that, because in the attempt to try and be someone, you constantly put yourself in positions to try and garner basically love and acceptance or value, right? But you're doing it from a pretense. It's not authentic. You're not really wanting to be there. You just want people to be impressed, or whatever humans do. So it's justified to think that you're being an imposter because you're not there for your own warranted reasons, right? So, but imposter syndrome on the other side is really the reflection of your feeling not enough, which is another lie. You're just who you are and you do the best you can. It doesn't really matter. And people will think whatever the hell they think. So there's two parts to that imposter syndrome, right? One is justified because you're putting yourself in positions or telling stories that aren't quite aligned with your heart or your soul, because it's your ego trying to garner value in the marketplace. So that is a lie. So you are an imposter. But then the feeling or the experience of imposter syndrome is really just the continuation of thinking that you're not enough somehow, which is not you. That's an expression of the identity that you've become misidentified with, right? So
and
I know it's a lot to download, but hopefully it helps people.
I think so. I mean, as you were talking earlier on, I'm like, we've kind of just nailed the whole podcast at the beginning here now. But it's a lot to grasp for people, especially as they're coming into this kind of work, right? So I've been doing, I guess, what you call mindset work since I was 22, myself having, traumatic experiences as a kid. I mean, they're always ongoing, right? I think this work is always ongoing. We're always trying to uncover these limiting beliefs that are holding us back from, whatever the next thing is that we're wanting to achieve. But I think also, in a way, actually, Anna and I, we have a very similar story in that we were both called Barbie at school. But Anna took that on as, the way that they said it was in a bullying way. For me, it gave me validation that I was pretty enough, or, so then I took that on to becoming a swimsuit model and doing things of external validation, of being called pretty and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting how we took those things on differently, and we're both doing the work now to really get back to that place of feeling love for ourselves without all of these stories.
No matter what.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating, and I'm glad that you could share that, because as I mentioned earlier, we live on one planet, but there are 8 billion worlds because everyone lives in their own reality. So here you are, one, quote unquote, not the same girls, not the same school, but the same incident, right? Where the kind of this derogatory word or the implication is interpreted in the way that it was intended, as you're less than and blah, blah, blah. And for you, it was used to fuel your own sense of inner worth, right? But in either case, it's a lie. It's just someone sharing an opinion. You both took it based on how your brain was interpreting it to basically sustain or justify your ego. And so for Anna, it's like, okay, now she has to constantly compensate and disprove her lack of worth. And for you, what happens ironically is, okay, it might have given you this gusto to start with, but then it creates a different form of pressure, which is the expectation or trying to sustain that when, as a woman on a cycle, not feeling great, skin's broken out, and now it's like you're not fulfilling on that view, right? So it's interesting because either way, it creates something.
Now it's about aging. Like one thing, I'm 42 now, and, coming into 40s, getting older, all of that kind of stuff. It's now the work to go, okay, who am I without the external validation or the appearance? Because that's going to change. And we're all getting older, but it's how, so that's the work that I'm doing at the moment, because
we're trying to stay young.
We're trying to stay.
Well, maybe I can help you, ladies, because the attempt to try and, so really this is going to hopefully shatter a couple of brain cells out there for people. The attempt to try and stay young is the one of the most rapid ways to age. Okay. Because if you really get it, right? Like I understand, but the attempt to stay young is all ego. So you're not getting older. The vehicle by which you interface with humanity is going to go through whatever process. Some people age gracefully, some don't. But the resistance to aging is what creates the dis-ease in the system, which will mean that your physiology ages more rapidly. From my side, without sounding too poetic, the essence of who you are never ages. It's eternal. You're an eternal being, a timeless, boundless being. And the vehicle, it's like thinking about your car. You could go to a car show where there's some cars out there that are 80 years old and they're immaculate versus some spoiled trust fund kid who'd got a BMW last month. He's already trashed it, right? So the degree to which you quote unquote take care of your vehicle gives the physical impression of age, but internally the essence of who you are is timeless. And if you live from that place versus trying to control what your body's doing, of course you want to take care of yourself. But if you're doing it, especially for women, there's such an inordinate amount of pressure on appearance for women, right? It's a $1 trillion industry if you combine plastic surgery, hair, makeup, clothing, all the things. So I get it, but the best way to age gracefully is to not try, not to age, right? Because that's
going to be really
resistance.
hard.
Yeah, I know it is. But if you can really tap into the essence of who you are, the youthfulness of your being, as opposed to the appearance of your carbon suit, your meat suit, your body, then you'll actually be surprised at how the cells can replicate in a way that isn't in any way deteriorating or not so rapidly when they're in a environment that's filled with hostility because you're judging or hating on yourself, right? So that's the precursor to cancer, not as medical advice, but for me, when cells go AWOL and they start to metastasize and spread, it's because those cells are in a hostile environment. What's the most hostile environment? Your view of yourself, right? So if Anna kept living, obviously she doesn't have to do it now after this conversation, but in a world where she's less than, I basically just added 10 years of God knows how much beauty to your life. You're welcome. Because
Thank you.
you're not in a world of judging yourself and trying to, like that, the hamster wheel of trying to compensate for a feeling of inadequacy anymore. You're like, oh, you don't necessarily know who you are without that, but it's a lot more liberating. And when you're in a body that feels free, then it tends to age quite magically and beautifully as opposed to against resistance and disease.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. It's like energy. It's like your energy becomes
Mm-hmm.
magnetic and people become attracted to that. And that's what helps. And I think there is science, there's proof behind where that impact it can have on our cells when it comes
100%.
to.
I mean, that's why I use the word dis-ease as a precursor to disease, right? Dis-ease, dis means lack of, right? Dysfunction, dis-ease. So the lack of or the absence of ease is in your body a state of fight or flight. If you're in fight or flight, then physiologically, first of all, digestion doesn't work because it's not necessary because your brain is telling you you're under threat. You're dumping cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline into your system. That's not rejuvenative, right? So you're literally in a state of fear, which itself is the precursor to your body falling apart, which we could call aging, right? If you're in a state of liberation because you're at peace with yourself, which is freedom, then you're in parasympathetic. Your nervous system means you digest, you rest, you sleep, which itself is rejuvenative for the body. So if you just understand the two branches of the nervous system, all based on perception, if you live in a dangerous world where you're inadequate, you have to be in fear. If you live in a world where you're a benefactor of everything and it's all miracles and rainbows and unicorns. Again, I don't need to exaggerate it too much, but you're loving life. And if you're loving life, your whole system is in peace, which means that you're going to age a lot more gracefully than if you're fighting and trying to prove yourself. That's just physics.
Yeah. Now, Peter, you say that you don't solve problems, you dissolve problems. Can you talk us through that and what you mean by that?
Well, you kind of were the beneficiary of it, hopefully, just then, right? Like I was investigating the truth of your theory that there's something like less than about you, that you're not enough. So rather than coming up with, well, you know what you should do, Anna, is like, okay, I know you did the whole law thing and you got the podcast, but what you need is you should come out with a fashion line and then maybe you could also get a TV show. Those are solutions built on top of the lie of inadequacy. Right, so that's solving problems. Or if someone has anxiety, someone might say, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to learn to do box breathing whenever you feel anxious, right? That's the solution. That doesn't actually resolve anything. It's like a guy going to the doctor with high blood pressure and he gets prescribed beta blockers. It looks like the blood pressure is better, but nothing's actually being resolved because if you come off the medication, boom, blood pressure's right back.
You're just masking the issue.
That's all it is, right? So for me, dissolution is going down to these subconscious constraints, investigating what I say, the validity of them, which is a fancy way of saying, is it really true that you're not enough? Is it really true that you're not safe? It's never true. And so when that's dissolved, then freedom is automatically present. It just rises to the surface. There's joy, there's lightness, as you said, confidence for you. In the absence of thinking you're not enough, confidence just arose. So I didn't have to give you a solution to develop confidence. It was just there. So that's the dissolution process, is removing the constraints that really are suffocating the beautiful, extraordinary souls we are.
Do you believe that life happens to us or for us?
I think both, but also by us, through us, so there's the gamut. But we're fundamentally beneficiaries of life, meaning the souls that we are incarnated into this dimension because we were still bamboozled by these constraints or feelings of inadequacy. And this particular paradigm is for our benefit to get triggered. So when you're getting triggered, it doesn't feel fun. Anna didn't want to be made fun of, but that was for her benefit, so that she could eventually bring to the surface the deeper feeling of inadequacy or not enough that she arrived with, so that hopefully at the end of her life, she's free of all these constraints and can move on to a better dimension.
And so like you just mentioned triggers then, because we all get triggered by something. If someone's getting triggered by someone or an event or anything like that, what can they do in that moment? Because that usually has an effect on the body, on the mind, on their emotions, on the relationships, all that kind of stuff. What can they do that can help them to turn those triggers around? Or are they just signs, like to say, maybe that's something I've got to work on?
Well, where you go? You're in Australia? Is that where you're based?
Yes.
Drink, right? Isn't that what everyone does there?
Drink all your problems away.
Oh, yeah, no worries. No, that would be a solution. That's not a dissolution.
A solution for a very short time.
Yes, and it actually adds to the very thing that you're trying to escape. But anyway, so yes, triggers, I'd say not just usually, but always create some sort of disruption internally and emotionally. So the opportunity is, rather than the tendency is to react, right? So depending on the circumstance, if it's a dude getting triggered by someone, he might swing and punch, right? That's one form of reaction. A woman might withdraw, cry, or scream, or get angry. There's all sorts of ways that people react. But rather, if you want to be powerful, you want to understand, okay, why is it that whatever transpired, whatever somebody said, or whatever I witnessed that was done, what is it that it triggered inside of me that makes me feel I lost my centeredness or my peace, right? So the question I often ask myself when I was starting this work is, can I be with this? Which is a weird, perhaps, choice of language, but it's really, I was inviting myself, like, whatever's happening, can I be with it? Can I be okay with it, right? So really, when people are getting triggered, what they want to realize is their brain, it's not them, it's automated, is saying, you're not okay in this situation. This is not okay. So you immediately create resistance. Resistance cascades into the body as dis-ease, and then emotionally it manifests however you want to protect yourself. Withdraw, scream, shout, control. So really, you want to be able to reverse engineer. Okay, what was it about that moment? What someone said, what someone did? What is it? Because it's a reaction. If it's a reaction, it's something you've done before. If it's something you've done before, it was in you before the event happened. So that's the sort of emotional detox, is to go, oh, okay, what must I think about myself that had that trigger happen? That's the dissolution process. So if someone at work got a promotion that you thought you were going to get, and now you feel really angry or maybe upset or feel that you're less than, it's probably because maybe you grew up in an environment where your older sibling, sister or brother was the better athlete or the better academic, and it's revisiting that deeper feeling of I'm less than. There's got nothing to do with someone else getting a promotion, because if I told that same person, yeah, they got the promotion now, but in 3 months, your company has a higher position that you're going to get, they wouldn't have the same reaction, because they would have a perception of a future that's actually enhanced relative to the one they wanted. So same event happens, they've got a different perception. They don't have the cascade of emotions that they would have done otherwise. So it's never in the event, it's in the way that we process it because of our conditioning.
If you want in on the secret to firmer, smoother skin.
Oh, yes, please.
Well, then you're going to want to hear about Olay's new ultra firming serum right here.
It's their lightest, most powerful serum yet, and it literally feels like water when you apply it. But most importantly, it's packed with serious actives for firmer and smoother skin from day one.
It's formulated with PHCA, a revolutionary antioxidant that works 3.5 times better than vitamin C and bakuchi oil, which is a retinol-like alternative that is clinically proven to be as effective as retinol.
It's also great for sensitive skin, and I love that it's not just one benefit. you're going to get 5. Fewer lines, firmer skin, smoother texture, smaller pores, and real hydration.
You should start to see results from day 1. Your pores may look smaller. By day 14, wrinkles should start to soften. And by day 28, you hope to see a visible lift.
You can grab it now at Chemist Warehouse, give it a go, and let your skin do the talking. And so I guess then you just mentioned before having those future beliefs, I guess, or that inner knowing that everything will be okay. That
it all works out.
It all works out. It's going to be fine, or whatever it is. And I mean, that's been a process that I've been practicing of letting go of little things, like I think, or just even things that may have been big things. But I think everybody is, really thinking about, how do I let go of, all the things that might trigger me, and so that I can be free. And so that process, you talk about, how can we let go a lot easier in those moments?
And is it being present in the moment and then not looking forward? Is that what you're trying to say, or what you are saying?
That's part of it. I mean, look, I also want to always have humility and compassion towards humans. Like I've done this work for decades, so it all seems very effortless for me because, I've now mastered it, teach it, share it, and get asked to go around the world to talk about it. But I want people to be a little bit more gentle with themselves. So when you're being triggered, it's almost too late, right? Because the cascade of hormones that are being released is no different than, say, if someone did, have 6 shots of tequila and the trigger is they're drunk. You can't just say, oh, well, just be present or let it go. It's in your system, right? So if you have the wherewithal to be present, Anna, that's amazing. That's a more advanced human who can go, hang on a minute, something just triggered me. Can I just really, in real time, analyze what's happening? That's amazing if you can. Typically, you have to wait for the emotions to leave the building and come out of your bloodstream, go home, be with a loved one, talk to your husband or a girlfriend and say, so-and-so said this and it really upset me. And I know it's not her or him, but that helped me to see something about myself. Would you help me to maybe see, like, what do you know about me that you could perhaps understand why I react that way? So it's usually, the unpacking is usually after the fact and when you're out of it, because the way the brain works, it's designed to predict and protect because we're really wired to survive as human beings. This is an old operating system that still runs the world, but we're trying to survive. So whenever you get triggered, what's actually happened is your brain thinks you're in a threatening situation. So then if you're in fight or flight, you're not in the other part of the brain where you can just sit and analyze because you're too busy trying to survive the moment, right? So that's where the compassion comes and goes, okay, you got triggered, you got upset, just, carry on about your day, go home, whatever it is you need to do, call a friend, talk to a therapist, just then you can start to, in the absence of the hormones that are going around your blood, sit down calmly, and then you can look at it more objectively. And that's the way we grow, and people always say, oh, well, how do I get rid of my triggers? I'm like, just live life, and find out where they are. I mean, it's one of my most used quotes that people share of mine, which is life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free, right? So that's the beneficiary part, is you're always going to attract whatever you need until you realize, oh, I've had that pattern for 30, 40 years and it's based on, what mom said, dad did, whatever. But it's not a truth. And so that's how it's not even a letting go. It's actually more of an integration. It's an accepting. That's part of our humanity. It's kind of adorable because it's really the view of a little child.
So from all the work that you've done, do you ever get triggered now, or is it once you've done the work? I don't know.
What you got?
I don't think anything would trigger you. But also, if you do the work, is it you won't be triggered by anything, or there is going to be triggers still in life? It's also how you deal with them. So it's a combination of both.
I would say when we're talking about triggers, it's always personal, right? It's sort of something to do with that individual being. There's things that I can definitely get upset about because I see what's possible for humanity. And then I look outside and it's like, we're just not even fucking close. We're an embarrassment as a species. If an advanced civilization came to our planet, wow, these guys harm the planet they live on. They harm each other. And then they even harm themselves. I mean, it's asinine. So that can upset me when I got the keys to a world of complete freedom and joy and, love and vitality that I want people to be able to access. So sometimes my impatience for that can get the better of me. But I also then very quickly adjust and go, okay, well, there's an intelligence to the universe that far surpasses me. And so things are unfolding at their speed. And I'm just doing my part to hopefully accelerate people's awakening to get out of the world of fear and suffering and step into this world of joy and possibility. So that's about the only thing that maybe triggers me is just like, come on, stop being fucking idiots. Huh?
I feel like you're definitely doing your part, like you said.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to ask, we both have kids, and whenever I speak to anybody, I really want to get some advice on how I can bring up my kids in a way where they don't have those limiting beliefs. Like, what is some advice that you would give to parents out there in bringing up kids, or what we can say to our kids, whether it's on a daily basis or it's just from time to time?
It's a great question. And I always like to, sort of a little disclaimer, I don't have kids, so I would never want anyone to think that I have the audacity to understand the lengths, especially you women go to between pregnancy, birth, and then breastfeeding and raising and butt wiping. And, so
I'm
I
still
can
at the stage of butt wiping. So I've got a 1-year-old.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. Yeah, really enjoying it.
So I first want to just sort of express that so that nobody thinks that I'm a know-it-all. I'm only speaking to the energy of beings and how we attract each other. So the first thing is, don't worry about it. They're souls who've incarnated and they chose you specifically for whatever it is they're here to learn. So you can give yourself a little bit of a hall pass and some grace that, you can't fuck it up. It's sort of unavoidable because every soul wants to experience resistance. Every soul wants to experience some feeling of constraint or inadequacy or insecurity. So you can't fully mitigate that. But I do want, this is a profound reflection for you. I want you to, just as a woman, to feel into what I'm about to say. I want you to consider that your kids already, however young, have now got a different trajectory in their life because of the conversation we had about 20 minutes ago, right? Meaning who you were before you asked me about not being good enough. Okay, it's not like you're a master of this new domain yet, but you now got to release something, right? You maybe won't try quite as hard, or you won't have to get the 5th degree, or, it's like you softened because you're no longer fighting the internal narrative that you're not enough. That is the best gift to your children, because we as humans learn more by mimicking, and especially energetically. So this was not one of my quotes, but a yoga teacher friend of mine was about to become a dad. And so he asked a friend of his who he admired, who was a father, had kids already. He said, what would be your advice to me as a soon-to-be father? And he said, I'll tell you this, your kids will rarely succeed at listening to you, but they will invariably succeed in becoming you. And I thought it was such an astute observation, and it really confirmed everything that I teach, which is be less worried about what you say and be a little bit more responsible for who you be. Right? Meaning that if Anna, you weren't conscious of it, but if you kept sort of maniacally is a strong word, but overly stressed, trying to get everything right, be a perfect mother, have the podcast, do that, then that's what they're learning.
Yeah.
And even the question, which is beautiful, could be a little bit of a residual of that, where you want to get it right and be the perfect mom, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so that well-intended, beautiful, but sometimes it's founded in the old operating system of trying to control things and get it right, which is that perfectionism, versus having a much more gracious way of allowing your kids to show up versus trying to control them. And as best as you can, be a role model of what a human looks like who lives from freedom, self-love, grace and gratitude, forgiveness, where you basically allow yourself to be you, knowing you're doing the best you can. That's one of the greatest gifts you can impart on your children.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I actually do tell my daughter, and she says it back to me. She's like, I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. And she loves her sister, and she also loves herself. And she always says that within the 3 others that she loves, which I think is really beautiful, because it's not something that I would have ever said when I was younger. So
yeah. And so you can build on that for her, because how old is she?
She's 4.
4, great. So there's going to come a time when she doesn't feel that because she failed at a class, or she didn't get picked by the boy she's had a crush on because he kissed someone else, or, she wasn't selected to the uni she wanted to go to, and so you can use this not in a manipulative way, but say, honey, you remember when you were young, you would always say you love me and you love your dad, and you remember you love you. Love includes that you don't always succeed. It's okay, right? So because just in a way that you can help it understand what love is, because saying I love you is beautiful. Everyone says it. We hear it in celluloid and movies and Hollywood all the time. But real love is so expansive, it makes space for your humanity. It makes space for your imperfections. So I would put that in your back pocket as a beautiful resource to help her, because she, especially as a woman in this day and age, is going to come up against where she doesn't feel lovable. Yeah. And that's the opportunity to really exercise love, is to bring that to the parts of us that feels unlovable. That to me is real love. It's easy to love the fact that, you're both good looking, sexy when you grew up, right? That's easy. But where could you love the parts of that, and still are, of course. But
I was waiting for that.
Stop it. We're both happily married. I mean, listen, your husband wanted to interact with me. I'm sure he's okay.
Yeah, he would actually love to be here. So.
Yeah. So basically, but it's where can you find the parts of you that judge yourselves? That's where you want to bring love to, right? That's the power of love. So anyway, so that's my gift to parents out there is kids are born with the capacity to love. They grow out of it when they start to realize that they did something wrong, they're bad, they failed, they're not enough. No, that's when we need to love the most, is to say it's okay, we all mess up, we're all imperfect, and can you love that part of you too? That's a powerful upbringing.
How important do you think the father is in daughters' worlds? Because I know for myself, definitely had the father wound. I think many girls or young girls, take on a lot about how their fathers treat them as young kids. But what have you seen in your work?
I mean, it's pivotal because, again, going back to the question earlier where I was saying about the world of duality, you've got to experience all of it. So the male and the female, through the laws of opposites and through the beautiful, if you imagine the picture of the yin and the yang, right, the white and the black, and there's this beautiful synergy that happens in all species between the male and the female. And so the masculine for the little feminine is a role model. And so what it does, it becomes the precursor to her understanding of how to relate to the masculine energy. And that becomes paramount because it can skew somebody even with sexual preference, right? Because oftentimes, without making generalizations, a woman who might be skewed towards homosexuality, often you'll find that she was quote unquote not loved or didn't feel affection or intimacy with the father figure, but found it more with girls and her mother. And so that skewed even her sexual preference, which is fine, no judgment, but to understand the mechanics of how these behavioral adaptations happen. So for a girl, when she grows up in an environment where the father is absent, perhaps, God forbid, even slightly harmful in his language or abusive, obviously it gets to the extremes of physical and sexual abuse, which is abhorrent. But then that girl is developing her understanding of how to relate to the masculine. And either it can become fulfilled, right? So the woman becomes subservient. She learns to tolerate abuse. So when she's a woman, she'll attract a man who is dismissive or disregarding her or, God forbid, is abusive, because that's what she's become accustomed to. Or what can happen with our egos is we tend to then compensate, go the other way. So like Anna, thinking she's not enough, tried to be enough, right? So what that can manifest as is a girl who becomes a little too big for her britches, or she, emasculates men as a way of sort of trying to compensate and get back at her father. That's also dysfunctional, right? Because it's like, no, men are assholes, and she becomes the girl boss. And so I think for both sides, the mother to the son and the father to the daughter are pivotal in a sort of a healthy, holistic way to learn to relate, not just to the opposite sex, ultimately to all humans, but as it relates to romantic relationships, the parents are really laying the groundwork for how kids interpret what love is. Because a lot of my people that I've helped, clients, they thought love was the expression of frustration, anger, and disdain between parents, because that's what they grew up in. Well, that's just what marriage is. It's like, well, no, that's the marriage you saw, but that's not necessarily what it has to be. So I have a quote. I say there's the language we use, and then there's the language that uses us. And so the language we're using is English, but the language that uses us is these subconscious imprints that we garner and gather through our childhood. So yeah, having solid role models and fathers and mothers is as best as you can, in this day and age is for me would make for a much better future. But we also have a lot of pressure out there where the world, again, without getting into conspiracies, the powers that be don't want powerful men. It's a threat to control, and, these tyrannical governments and people that run the world, like the last thing they want is powerful, present, authentic, integrous men.
It's so important. I think that just comes back to what you said before in terms of just doing the work on ourselves in order to show up and be the best role models for our kids. When it comes to, if there's a woman right now, maybe not being able to attract the kind of relationship that she wants, how does she first figure out what's holding her back?
Great question. So, we can always learn from history. You just don't want to be defined by it, right? So most people, unfortunately, are just reliving history. That's the reactability of a human being. So she could, generously look over her shoulder without any judgment and go, okay, what has been the track record of my romantic relationships? What have who have I been in those relationships? What kind of men have I attracted? And really do sort of an audit. If she's really committed to having a relationship, I can see that I was in this relationship overly tolerant or subservient. What does that mean about me? Maybe I don't value myself. Oh, where did that start? I was picked on at school, or my dad never gave me affection, or my mum made me wrong for a lot of things. So what would her story be? Maybe that I'm, not lovable, or I'm less than. And then to, again, like the process I take people through and teach in the mastermind is, who could I be in the absence of that? Because it's not true. I felt that way. That's the relationship she's looking for. It's not with a man. That would be the extension of the relationship with herself, right? Because we are always going to attract fundamentally people that reflect the relationship we have with ourselves. So if a woman out there right now is struggling to attract a relationship where she feels seen, where she feels heard, where she feels held, where she feels safe, the opportunity, I'm not saying it's easy, is to find all of those qualities within herself. Because typically we look to relationships to try and compensate for that which we feel is lacking within us, right? So a woman will feel, especially for women these days, I really feel for you ladies, like there's so much pressure on beauty, appearance, sexuality, sensuality, all of this, right? As the way that you get picked, it's primal, right? And for the guy, not in any way dismissing my fellow men out there, but there's a lot of pressure to be the best in terms of performance, right? That could be business, finance, sports. In the bedroom is just more performance. For women, it's more appearance. So, where can that woman, or equally a man listening who wants a relationship, find that sense of true love that I was sort of inviting Anna to keep in her back pocket for her daughter, where, oh, wow, I can see that I didn't have the greatest childhood, and that I learned, that maybe I wasn't good enough for my parents, but that doesn't mean I'm not good enough as a truth. And if I could find that sense of love and acceptance for myself, how would I feel? And you will automatically become more attractive as a being if you fall in love with yourself, like if you found true acceptance for yourself. So that one stereotype or that one avatar of a woman who can't find a good relationship, her opportunity is find the best relationship with herself, and then pretty much guarantee she'll have a lot of suitors.
I totally agree with that, because when I was younger, I would always go for the guys that I didn't see would eventuate into anything. I wasn't happy with who I was at the time.
Yeah.
And I was almost too scared to actually let them in. So I'd only get so far. And then I was like, okay, I don't want you to see my true self. So I'm not going to let you in any further. And I actually had to go on a show to meet my actual husband. So, and it was a way, it was kind of like a forced way in a way to like actually sort of let go of that. And then I feel like if I didn't go on that, I'm like, maybe I would still be single because I still wouldn't be happy with who I am. And unless I'd worked on myself, but it was for years and years. And I never had a boyfriend before my now husband. So I can totally relate to that.
I really appreciate the share, because it's really, you're attracting men who you haven't really open to, even though it seems counterintuitive for the ego. That's a safe place. It's actually the least safe place because you're not actually being you and you're not fully available. This is why even in intimacy, women often struggle, with lovemaking, right? Because they're actually in a relationship where they don't feel safe enough to let go to be in the experience of intimacy, which is sad, but that's often for a lot of women who go to these tantra workshops and they're trying to experience whatever they want, orgasms here, there, and everywhere. Usually it stems to some sort of emotional insecurity where they're not feeling fully held by their partner. And obviously, if you're just dating, it's hard to establish that. You need some time and commitment and some evidence that you can trust the person you're with, but it's an energy, so the fact that you could see that was the kind of man you attracted makes sense for the woman that you were at the time, which was not willing to show herself because of the way she viewed herself, which means then you're not available for a relationship, right?
Oh, exactly.
Because you can't relate,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we always talk about, and like you said, about working on yourself first before you can truly open yourself up to others.
But one thing you said at the beginning of the show was that most of your clients are women, right? So women are doing the work.
Yeah.
But
the men need to be.
The men need to be doing the work too, because when
more
you say—
and more are showing up. They really are. They really are, for sure. My numbers on Instagram are definitely skewing towards 50-50, which is nice to see. And I think it's also by, a large part because women are then, not through force, but let's face it, sometimes you can be very convincing ladies, like, telling your boyfriends and your husbands and your dads to, look into this. You got to check it out. So you often are the innovators too. But I think men now are recognizing the importance for their own sanity, for their own vitality, for, men might be focused on abundance more and success, but there's still huge mental obstacles to that. So they're like, okay, I've got to really understand, why am I sabotaging these great job opportunities too? So it's happening. It's encouraging.
What advice do you have for women who are doing the work and might be in a relationship with a man who isn't open to the work? Is there ways that she can invite him in, and so that he can maybe hear some of the cues or the things that she's wanting him to hear?
Beautiful question. You girls have got great questions. So in that case, and I hear that one a lot, whether it's a partner or a family friend or whatever, it's all about delivery and intentionality. Because what I found is, even though it seems so well-founded and the intention is, I love my husband, but he doesn't do the work and I'm trying to get him to do it, right? That will come across to the man through the lens of, there's something wrong with me, and you're basically nagging, right? So there's a difference I talk about between instruction and inspiration. So most women, unbeknownst to themselves, with all the best intentions, tend to be more instructional, because you see things and, you're like, well, you should do this and do that. No brain responds well to instruction, unless you're signing up for like a particular course with a coach to learn something. But when it's in an intimate relationship, the best way, as I was sort of saying to Anna before about the kids question, is to lead by example. So if you as a woman, in this case, using your example, are wanting your partner, your boyfriend, your husband, or a family member to step into the work with you, show them the difference first, who you are now being that's different. And then usually you'll have an opportunity to apologize about something. It could be as subtle as, honey, like, I'm doing this course, I'm really enjoying it. And usually on the back of maybe a compliment, honey, you've just, you look great. You're more consistent with your workouts, or you've been really sweet to me. Thank you. I've really been working. And what I realized is, and I want to apologize for, is I didn't know it, so I'm not going to beat myself up for it, but it was unconscious. I've been making you wrong for 20 years, or ever since you did this. And I'm sorry about that. When especially when a dude hears that, he's like, holy shit, like, I don't know what you're doing, but I need to learn that, right? So typically it's through the energy of both your own authenticity of changing your own behaviors, but then being accountable, not in a way of guilt and shame, but for who you've been in that relationship. Because I've yet to meet a human being who can't look back and then be, to some degree, embarrassed about how they've treated somebody they say they love, So that's usually the best way to get people interested, at least, is like, lead by example, really show, a shift in your own behavior, your own style of communication. But then typically just be accountable and apologize for the way that you've been acting before. It could be just an integrity issue, right? It might not be me making your partner wrong, but you could say, honey, I've always talked about I'm so annoyed about this muffin top. And I've always said I want to get in shape. And he's like, yeah, honey, you've been talking about that for years. Well, I realized I never did anything about that. And I don't like that about myself. So I just want to apologize. And, now moving forward, I've signed up for this and I've got a gym. And like a dude will be like, holy shit, like what happened? Right. So it's about that is the way to inspire versus instruct.
What about divorce and the ending of relationships? Because, that's happening. I guess 50% of marriages these days are ending in divorce. When it comes to relationships, do you believe there are expiry dates or that soul contracts do finish and that maybe we're not meant to be together forever?
The first two, I'd say yes. Expiry dates and soul contracts finish. The not meant to be together is just like a human phenomenon. You can or you can't. It doesn't really matter. But nothing that happens that's not meant to happen, right? Again, one of my more popular quotes is what happened, couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And that's just a way for humans to be able to reconcile their history and not drag it around and beat themselves up or make someone else wrong for years, right? So likewise, when a relationship terminates, comes to an end, I'm not saying the means by which it got there is fun or like joyous or loving. It could be like hostile and talk to my attorney. It can be angry. But nonetheless, for whatever reasons, yes, the dynamic of what was at play has run its course. So, but the thing that most people really miss the boat on is you think the relationship ended because of the other person. That's the most powerless way to move forward into whatever the next relationship might be, because then what you're doing is unconsciously, you're under the assumption that this relationship will be better because this person's better. Right. But that's not how it works. Really, divorce, it's a very profound distinction, but I'll share with you, a client of mine was going through a divorce and she said, I don't know. It's really difficult. They had two boys and I don't know how I'm going to let go of him. And I said, you're not letting go of him. You're letting go of the version of you that attracted him and is still attached to him. So the real divorce is not of a person outside of you, but of the version of you that attracted that relationship in the first place. That's the only way to grow. And that's a powerful understanding, right? Because we're so externally focused. It's them. Oh, it's their fault. They're the dick. She's the bitch. But well, then you've gone nowhere because you're a victim of circumstance. So if you want to have a powerful separation, then recognize, okay, who was I in that relationship that equally led to the disharmony and the end of it? And how can I upgrade that version of me so that I not only attract a different person, but no longer contain or continue the same behaviors that I had that was the demise of that relationship? But again, that takes a powerful person who's willing to look at it that way.
Yeah.
No, I think you're spot on there. I wanted to ask one question about identity and how we can stop our identity from trapping us.
Well, that's its role. So, I mean, the identity is where we're all trapped. I say the ego is like a boa constrictor for the soul, right? It's just suffocating us until we become aware of what are the distinctions, the pillars, and the characteristics of the identity. So that is the work. That's what I do, is to help people break free from their ego or their identity. So how do we stop it from trapping us? By realizing, first of all, that's its raison d'etre. That's what the identity does. Don't make it wrong for it. It's at some level a form of protection. It's trying to keep you safe. It's not bad. It just confines your ability to access potential joy and true freedom. So you want to have a little bit more of a gracious love affair with the identity. Go, oh, it's just my humanity. It's okay. But I'm not willing to be looking through the lens of a scared child who's still defined by inadequacy, insecurity, or scarcity. I get it. I understand. I can look at my childhood and see with compassion why I felt like I'm a loser or a failure or I'm a mistake or I'm not wanted, but I'm not willing to live a life where I'm defined by that anymore. And so thank you, identity, for trying to protect me, but I'm ready to live a life of freedom, love, and possibility.
Where does the ego come from though? Like where did this all, because I mean, I've done early on, I remember reading a book by Eckhart Tolle, one of the first books I read when I was about 22, on the ego. It's called A New Earth. You probably read it. And I really discovered, I was like, this little voice in my head that is telling me to do
Yeah.
shit, or, all those stories, where does it all come from?
Well, I mean, again, without getting too esoteric, for me, they're the constraints with which we arrived are the foundation and the constructs from which our identity is built. So that's why we're here. This is why the planet is the dimension for souls to come who are still stuck in their own fears and limitations. This is not to, raise a family and get money and have followers. That's the human pursuit. But the real soul pursuit is, I'm still not recognizing my own divine essence. And I've got these stories that life is going to pull to the surface, and then I'm going to hopefully work through. So that is the construct. That is the design of the game of being human. It's sort of what I call cosmic hide and seek. It's sort of the spiritual straitjacket is the ego. And the game is, okay, who can break free? That's it. That's why we're here.
I love it. It makes it more fun, right? And
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then whenever you get triggered, it's not something you're not going to go and gossip and, talk to your neighbors about how, a pain in the butt that person is. It's like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to discover more freedom and my own divinity and realize I'm not at the effect of life. I don't have to be a victim of people's opinions. So it does change the whole playing field. And again, that's what I say. That's the only game really that I'm interested in, is the game of self-liberation.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that we're ending in this way, because it is really about joy. It's about fun. It's about play.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do. Keep focusing on that, and good things will come your way.
Yeah, and be responsible in the meantime for what's in the way of it. It's one of my favorite quotes that I've been using recently by Rumi. He said, "Seek not for love, but merely seek for all the obstacles you have built against it."
Now, is there anything else, like we've covered a lot, we probably could sit here all day and talk, but is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is really important that we should talk about?
I think we did pretty well. I mean, there's so many things that I could invite people to consider, which, as I said earlier, I always like people to be a little bit more compassionate and kind and forgiving for themselves, because then they'll extend that to others. I think, one of the built-in prisons of the human ego is to make us and others wrong, and it creates a lot of disharmony in the world. So I think, as part of the process of hopefully liberating the soul you are, you can learn to just go easy on yourself and realize this isn't for the faint of heart. Okay, it's easy, and I make it sound simple because I've done it for so long. But, when you've been living in a habit of 40 years thinking that you're not loved, it's not the easiest thing just to let go of. So be patient. So that's really the invitation.
And on that, I know Christy is someone who almost weekly you'll go speak to someone.
I'm dedicated to the work.
Which is great. But for some people who will say, okay, well, you're seeing someone every single week, but are things changing? Why do you need to go see someone every week about this? Like, is it just an ongoing thing that forever you need to work on yourself and it's never going to end? Or is there a point where you're completely happy with yourself and you can say, okay, I'm done. I feel like I'm free. I don't need to work on myself anymore?
I think it's a little bit of both. I've worked with some of the greatest performers in the world in sports, particularly athletes, and then also musicians and actors, and even the best of the best. They're always refining their craft, right? So you could say that's the never-ending part, but it's coming from a different place, right? It's not where you think there's a problem you're trying to fix. It's something that you're wanting to refine. So for me, having done this for 25 years, okay, I could argue that I don't know anyone who's more free, more at peace, less triggered, happier, but I'm also constantly wanting to master that, refine it, be more generous in sharing it, make a bigger difference in the world. So it's not like I just sit on my laurels and, say kumbaya in a cave and just live, with light coming out of my genitals or something. It's like, no, there's work to be done. I've often said that the purpose of life is to, go back to your husband's question, is to liberate ourselves from these constraints. But then to me, then the opportunity of life after that is to help other people do the same. So that's what I'm committed to. So for me, yes, you get to this place and this threshold where you're no longer fighting yourself. There's a certain degree of peace, but then there's the exploration of possibility. Instead of coming from a world of suffering where you're always trying to fix something and get away from something, you start to step more into a world of exploration, which is like, wow, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to defend myself. I don't need to fix myself. but what is available? What is my potentiality? And that's something that I think is never ending, but that's a joyous thing to explore.
That's like absolutely like why I continue to do the work. It's now, I remember when I was in my early 20s, when I started doing this work, I was actually, with Eckhart Tolle and started reading all these books. I was someone who was highly triggered and emotional, whereas now these days hardly get triggered. If I do, it's like, okay, what do I need to work on within myself? What did that bring up for me? And then it's now like, okay, how do I get to an energetic place where I feel good all the time? And then I can start to, like this podcast. The reason we do this podcast is because we want to invite people like you and help share this work and then continue to do the work ourselves so that more people can have that freedom. So it's this beautiful cycle of love.
It is. No, it's really beautiful. And it's really sort of what I'm working on very dedicatedly right now is this new, it's like through AI, but an operating system, which is different than the one that's currently running humans. So to be able to help people to see, wow, in the absence of a world of limitation, fear, suffering, disease, and dysfunction, beneath that, it's not something to look for. It's actually in the dissolution of those constraints and those means of self-protection that automatically will reveal a different existence, which is founded in freedom, love, possibility, joy, and vitality. So there are two distinct worlds available to humans, and we want to have compassion for the one that's still running the show. But my invitation for people who are interested and ready to step into a new paradigm, it doesn't have to be that way. You can live a life of freedom, joy, and pure possibility.
We always ask all our guests, what makes you feel confident in your skin?
I guess my sense of just inner freedom and self-love and acceptance.
I felt like I could almost answer that for
Yeah, I
you
know.
after this conversation. Well, thank you. And also, where can we find you?
So Instagram, social media is my biggest, Peter Crone. It's all just my name. So same on Facebook, LinkedIn, and then petercrone.com is my website. And, if people just want to dip their toe in, I have my Freedom membership, appropriately named, with over 100 hours of programs and all my live events. And there's a beautiful community in there and it's super affordable. And then if people want to do a bit of a deeper dive and do my 3-month program, that's my mastermind. And depending on when this comes out, there'll be another one starting probably end of January, beginning of February.
Awesome.
Well, it's so lovely to be with you, ladies. And thank you for having me on. And hi to your respective men in your lives and your children.